Okay, guys, for this topic, I kind of want to get into the metaverse. And really, I've titled this WTF is the metaverse. What the F is it? Yeah. Okay. So before we kick off, what I want to do is just kind of give you some information, set the scene, give some context to this. Okay. So what I did is I looked for a definition of the metaverse, and I went to that golden source, that Bible of information on the internet.
Twitter.
Wikipedia. And I got a definition, and I'll read it verbatim, and it's basically: a metaverse is a network of 3D virtual worlds focused on social connection. In futurism and science fiction, it is often described as the hypothetical iteration of the internet as a single, universal virtual world that is facilitated by the use of virtual and augmented reality headsets. Basically, sounds like somebody in a marketing department wrote that. But anyway, moving on from that, how I've heard it coined is Web 3.0. And to some, it might be even 10.0, given that it's so far out there. The phrase was actually coined by a 1992 book called Snow Crash. It's an old term. Okay? And I think in modern times, obviously we have seen Ready Player One, but if you think about it, we've seen The Matrix, we've seen obviously Star Trek Next Gen with the holodeck, and we've also seen Tron. All have their kind of versions of what a metaverse could look like. Yeah? So, guys, let's get into it. But, thinking about this, you have companies who are making really big bets on the metaverse. To a point where Facebook rebranded themselves to Meta to build this metaverse platform. And I think, Jay, you said it as well. Like, there's a slow or not slow march going towards the metaverse. Got things like games as a service. We got Nvidia's Omniverse, which, if I read out the definition of it, is a easily extensible platform for 3D design collaboration. We have Xbox and PlayStation looking at free-to-play in-game ads and monetization. And in one way, I think that's going to feed into what the metaverse could turn into. And is the metaverse already here in the form of Fortnite, MMOs, live service games? So let's get started. Al, I'll start with you. What do you think? Is this just another kind of tech gold rush? Is it the next evolution of the internet?
Yeah. I think we touched upon it at a previous one, right? I guess maybe overlapping with the VRs type stuff, but I think it is another gold rush kind of thing. The metaverse itself, and actually just virtual worlds, really, have been there for a very long time. We did mention PlayStation, Home and other things, and actually, if you look at, I would say the closest one that you've got today is GTA 5. Like that's the one I think is the one that's closest to it. The rest of them, I don't think they're anywhere near, to be honest. And I think things like Facebook doing their renaming, they've probably shot themselves in the foot. And I think it's not quite there. The accessibility just isn't there. Yeah, I think it's a gold rush. And I think the only other comment I think you kind of mentioned Web 3.0, but I think Web 3.0 is more tied to blockchain NFT type stuff, which I'm not convinced is actually the correct move, so I wouldn't coin it Web 3.0.
Well, I would say the whole blockchain NFT probably speaks to the economy of this metaverse.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, the other two aspects that I've heard described around Web 3.0 is the decentralization of data, so the users have more control over their data, and the original internet also wasn't really designed to deal with finance and money in the way that it should have, and so the crypto and blockchain allows all those things to happen in a much safer way. And I know we're nowhere near that now, but there's so many definitions of a metaverse, aren't there? And in the same way that people take their existing product and say it's AI driven,
Yeah,
and they had the same code and the same models and everything, and just calling it AI. It's kind of what's happening with the metaverse, right? It's currently at a marketing stage, but for me, I think I think we all agree, it's where we're going to head over the next 10, 15, 20, 50 years, 100 years, where we'll be connected more so than we are with each human. If you think about our phones, right? We're not physically connected, but we are on our phones all the time. So some people argue that we're already part of a pseudo metaverse because we are already connected, right? I think at some point we'll get to where you'll be able to connect to it without a headset. It'd be frictionless,
Yeah.
and you'll be seamlessly going between the real world and another world which is artificial. But you'll be able to do things in the artificial world that you can't do in the real world. And I think that's where all of it will head. And I don't think it will replace the real world, but things such as education and entertainment, I can certainly see it providing things that you just can't do, right, in the real world. So I find it a very exciting place, and I think it also gives, coming back to gaming, I think it gives a north star for gaming companies and the publishers and the gaming platform owners to stretch their games a little bit more, nudge it forward for the next evolution of game mechanics and gaming engines, everything. I think on the net it's a positive thing, but coming back to what Al said, at the moment it's been abused for the gold rush, which you get with every round of innovation.
Yeah.
So they'll go through that standard boom and bust, and we'll come out of it with the stuff that actually is valuable and will stick.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an exciting thing to happen. I just hope it doesn't take 20 years and most of our core lifetime is gone, and we're on our deathbeds, and then everyone's connecting up into the metaverse and living forever.
I mean, part of it is that definition of saying that it has to be augmented reality or virtual reality headsets. That's just not. I don't think that's a requirement, honestly. Like there are plenty of virtual worlds that you don't need that, and if you imagine okay, you could because Fortnite also penned the term metaverse to avoid not being a game. That's what it was trying to do, and if it opened up where people could put their own content in, like an actual open world, allow people to put stuff in. Can you imagine GTA 5 where literally people could put their own content in?
And I have a point that speaks to exactly that. Yeah. Yeah, and guys, I mean, ultimately, the so-called metaverse and why, and I think more to the point, why are people so interested in it? Why are companies so interested in it? I mean, the reality is it, and it's funny I should use the word reality, I mean, is it really about where they see people spend most of their time for work and leisure? Is it ultimately where the money's going to be?
I think that's the wrong question, because I think we're already doing that. When you're in your spare time, like we are now, looking into a screen, having a Skype call, or playing on the PlayStation or Xbox, I think we're in the metaverse then.
Yeah.
I don't see it being anything different.
Yeah. What's different, what could be different, is the number of people.
I think the immersion level will increase. I think that's the difference, right? So the fact that all of your friends and family and colleagues at work, you can chat to them on whatever comms platform you've got in your workplace or WhatsApp, or you have access to instant access to all those people. So you're already in direct communication all the time. You might not think it because you're not actually typing to them, but you're always online.
Yeah.
It's just the immersion level is where we increase in intensity.
Yeah.
And I actually heard Elon Musk on a Joe Rogan podcast talk about this fact that we're already connected, and we're kind of we're cyborgs already.
We're,
When do you go anywhere without your phone?
we're being, I would say, softened up or desensitized for that moment where we make it into this so-called metaverse. Because you're right, we're 100%, we're always connected. I'm connected at work when I'm doing work, and then on my left-hand side, I pick up my phone. You might be looking at Twitter or something like that. You're connected. We've got fridges and kitchen appliances that are connected, your IoTs. There's all sorts of things. And you're probably right, we're closer to this so-called metaverse than we may really understand that we are.
We're already in it.
Yeah.
Elon Musk talks about this world, a high chance of being a simulation anyway. If you come back to the VR thing, what is the difference between a physical PlayStation VR headset put in your eyes and you're seeing a world versus the two eyes that you've got on your physical body taking light and you interpreting that information? It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's just your belief in
you believe what is connected to you and this is real. So it's just a mind shift, and I can imagine a world where the virtual world and real world, people don't have that same distinction, the same level of distinction that we have. It will be just these two worlds exist, and in the real world I have to do these things in order to keep alive, and then maybe all my work and social life and entertainment and whatever else work gets created, has to be done in that metaverse. I can see that. I can see
could probably work
offices all closing down and everyone's living where they want to. We have far less pollution in the real world, and think everything's being done in the metaverse, isn't it? It's just
the remote working question, yeah, and the way we communicate, yeah, and it's pretty much remote, it's virtual, and it's becoming the norm now. I mean, people are not going back to offices in droves, I would say. People are even now that the pandemic is somewhat lessened, I don't see. I mean, in my own situation, when I'm in the office, there are days where I'm one of two. They're just not doing it. If you know what I mean, it's no longer the norm in their minds, and I think that hastens our journey towards this so-called metaverse. Yeah, whatever form it takes, and God knows, right? If we ever get closer to the final form of the metaverse, all someone needs to do is trigger another pandemic, and we'll all kind of latch onto it, if you know what I mean.
Maybe. Yeah. I think ultimately it depends on the services and the purpose of it, right? So don't forget that whilst we are connected to our phones and stuff, we're not necessarily a different person. We're still the same person. We're still doing that same stuff. I think the advantages of a virtual world or a metaverse, it allows you to be a completely different persona, right? And I think whether they can actually make that work or not, and whether they could make you really go into a completely different role and role playing and stuff. I'm not quite sure that they're necessarily there.
Yeah.
But just on that's just a construct of where we are now. If you live in a certain place or work for a certain company or have a certain hobbies, you create your own persona. And society creates it. It's not a real thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's an argument from there's a work like social styles, right? So even when you go to work, you actually put on a different work style than your even natural style, right? So
exactly.
there's a lot of that sort of stuff, which is quite interesting when you're trying to glean it out. So
you flick a switch, right? I mean, and you might say, like, right now there's people who have an online presence, and that isn't who they are in the physical world, right? So that's not difficult to believe, not at all.
And just bringing it back to the gaming lens, what do you guys think is the short and medium term impacts of metaversing on gaming?
Okay, from that perspective, I think let's bring it back to how we get to the metaverse and maybe what constitutes or contributes to the metaverse. And I personally broke it down into kind of a number of things. Yeah, and in no order of, I would say, importance or priority. But I thought to myself, VR and AR, so virtual reality and augmented reality. And not for every kind of like form of the metaverse, but that might be, let's say, closer to the end state or the final form, if you like your anime. Yeah, Dragon Ball it away. The internet itself obviously had to be there in order for us to have a metaverse, because that's how we're connected. Yeah, in my view, metaverse is about connection. I was thinking to myself, like, Internet of Things, where the virtual and real life overlaps. Internet of Things, your console is amongst the Internet of Things, isn't it? Your PC is under Internet of Things, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
They're learning more about us basically on our console and then our PCs than we could ever understand as well. And then services. And for us, it's about game services. So the Game Passes and the PS Pluses and whatever else. And I think it's all about that. Really, I kind of think the metaverse is going to be about all of that coming together in stages. And we're not really talking about the service. We're not talking about VR or AR or the internet, or that our consoles basically divulging our deepest, darkest secrets, right? It's just one thing contributing to that whole. Yeah, and I think it will start off with, let's say, game services and live service games. Those are the sorts of metaverses, let's say, that people want to plug themselves into right now. We don't really want to plug ourselves into the metaverse for practicalities. We want to do it for escapism, is what I'm thinking.
But that's the current construct, right? But I can imagine where a time when all work is done, or a majority of work done is done in the metaverse because of cost, and there is more powerful tools to do better things faster in the metaverse. Let's just make this up, doing finance.
Yeah,
you can do
totally
graphical models and you can visualize stuff, and therefore it's a place of creating a source of income, your main source of income. That I can very much see that being happening.
And I give you Nvidia's Omniverse.
I think the main thing they should really be going after is stuff like the conventions, right? Like E3 or something. If you could actually make a virtual world for that, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
that would be. You could go and you could do the whole thing, whole E3, couldn't you?
You could.
That'd be amazing for marketing, playing games, speaking to developers.
Yeah, I think that's got to be maybe a facet of it. But being a bit old-fashioned, I kind of really would miss the whole, the whole. Let's go
maybe
there.
it's both. Maybe you could be there in person as well as the virtual world of the same exact thing.
Absolutely.
But what much of the experience was virtually, really should have a word here, indistinguishable from real life? Because when we think about VR now, we think it in the constraints of what you can do now. That's not going to be the case in 10 years' time, is it?
No, I mean, I don't think so. It's a difficult one. I mean, at the end of the day, right, humans like that interpersonal engagement when it's all said and done. We want to shake somebody's hand, if you know what I mean.
But sorry, I'll try to cut across here. But for example, and I know Elon Musk is working on this. I'm just using this as an example. He overinflates what he can do anyway. But he talks about this neural link product that they're creating, where you're connecting directly into the brain.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to. I'm just extrapolating out. You may not have to actually have a glove that you wear on your physical hand and you feel like you're touching stuff. The sensory things will be sent to the brain, so it will. They can send signals to your brain to make you think it's real, even though it's visually might not look as real as a real. Or it can get to that level of fidelity.
That's the Matrix.
It's all about the immersion, really, because
it is the Matrix. Yeah.
Because there's stuff like I was playing World of Warcraft for so many years. I built some really great connections with a lot of people from around the world, kind of in there, and actually in one case we actually did eventually meet in person, which was really quite nice. But I had some great interactions with those guys. I did, days where I didn't go on, I would miss them. I would miss that interaction with them online.
It's interesting. I mean, right now, obviously, the initial metaverse, right, it's just a tool to supplement, I think, real life. But to Jay's point, at one point, in time, if we could replicate how we feel, then all bets are off, right?
But let's say you're born now, and by the time you get to your teens, things are being done in such a way it's mostly on the metaverse, and then you get into your 20s, you're not going to be used to the same level of physical interaction
absolutely.
that the previous generation are. So
absolutely.
It's not going to be it's almost like a barrier we've created in our generation.
Absolutely. Well, think about it this way, right? For me, when I started out, the internet was new. Google was new. Now my nieces, in their generation, they've got their own YouTube channel. They tweet. Yeah. They Twitch. It's all sorts of things. That's so normal. It's normal. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I'm looking at them for, how's this normal? Yeah. But it's normal. And then the next generation, who knows what they're going to get up to? If VR, AR becomes more of a normal thing and it's accessible and the barrier entry is low, yeah, who knows?
I think I think kids will go to school and it's all in the metaverse.
Potentially, yeah.
And then by the time they come out, it's the jobs are in the metaverse.
Yeah. And I can see, like you say, Jay. I think I can see jobs literally in the metaverse, right? Even in virtual worlds as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I mean, like, I'm not really sure I want that basically universe to exist.
No. There's a distinction between what we want and what the next
what's going to happen.
Want, and what's. But I think there is a baseline where our bodies, our genes, have been constructed to live in the real world, and if certain things aren't met, our health deteriorates, and that barrier of minimal things that are needed, some exercise, getting real sun, having food, about a real physical social interaction that keeps our body nurtured, that was always going to be a barrier, because we're not going to be able to progress to human genetics in order for some of those things to be not impacted by living in a virtual world. And that's been already stretched now by being always online connected.
Yeah, correct.
And that limit has already been tested. So I think that there is a limit to how this will work.
But I kind of think, we're going to kind of science fiction territory at the moment, and ultimately that could be the way the human race is kind of headed. But just kind of rewinding it a little bit back now, talking about games, right? Video games, the whole VR, AR, the internet, whatever that is, OITs, consoles and services. I think for me, the metaverse right now should be about transporting us to fantastic worlds or places. Yeah, of course we can communicate and engage, absolutely. But I don't know, as gamers, would we want to communicate and engage in a place that looks like a bloody kind of office?
No.
We don't want that, right? And I think for gamers, I mean, it's just about getting us to that spot. And this is one thing I was thinking about this. Like we talked about PlayStation Home the last podcast. I think Al, you were saying, and we were saying, right? It's a VR ready, offering. True, but God, it was boring.
Oh yeah. Well,
I mean,
the base was there.
Yeah,
they just didn't take it to that next stage.
Yeah.
What is that next stage? Because this is where I, as much as I believe in the metaverse, I'm not clear on what the next stage would be to really entice me. And I before you answer that question, right? I strongly believe that gaming is going to be the first kind of, let's say, domain that's really going to drive and shape the metaverse.
I think we're the most amenable to it, because we're
exactly.
already we're already diving into these virtual worlds, whether it's for VR or something else, and we already bought into the universes that these kind of games give us. So
and also the games companies are producing the most immersive, enticing type of things people want to engage with. So, but even us being gamers and me speaking on my own behalf, right? I still don't know what that next step would be that would really entice me as an individual.
So if you treat PlayStation Home as it was, right, it needed to go to, as Joe has kind of put, it needs to be about services. There needs to be a reason for you to be in there. There needs to be content. There needs to be a reason. There's some interesting stuff around. I don't know if you've seen what people do on VR chat, where they just go into rooms and just do random crap. And some of these rooms may be very specific as to what they want to do. But being able to bring people together of those sorts of, in that sort of nature, to talk about certain things, be quite nice. And then the things that I suggested around E3, additional content where people can get access to it. And then a reason to be there. Why should you spend time there? If you accumulate currency of some sort within that environment, just being in that environment or doing things in that environment or contributing to that environment, and of which you then get rewards on, say, skins, furniture, all that stuff. It gives you a reason to do it. It gives you a reason to spend time in there. But they just didn't get to that point. Everything was microtransactions. You need to pay for this, pay for that. No one wanted to spend time in there because it was just dead. It was just empty.
Yeah, but that's where the problem is going to come, right? Is in order to sustain all of that, it's going to have to generate money straight away, and you're back into that kind of these companies not biting the bullet and really driving the innovation and creating the real value proposition for a gamer, versus taking the shortest route where it doesn't create that great experience just to make a quick buck.
And that's what they were doing, right? Microtransactions were the problem. And actually what they should have been thinking about, and GTA's had the idea for ages, where, you've got billboards. It's literally a virtual world, a normal world with billboards. And to be honest, they could just advertise on the goddamn thing.
I think that's my point here, guys. Right? The Metaverse is almost an alternative to our reality. But what's consistent is a human being is still residing in that reality, and we're susceptible to advertising, consumerism, and all of those sorts of things. Okay, so this is why I kind of think the first step into the metaverse will be live service games or otherwise, like the Fortnites of the world, and they're quite far along with that. I mean, Sony and the company who owns Lego, they have each invested $1 billion to be part of that future. And maybe it's about the Unreal Engine, right? But maybe it's about something else. We don't know that. Yeah?
But we're speculating, what could it be, right? For example, right? Let's say we all love Fortnite, obsessed with Fortnite, and we're going to play that for the next 5-10 years, right? The metaverse describes interconnected worlds and being easy transition across those worlds. Why would you want to play Fortnite connected to other games, or even other games connected by the same publisher? I struggle even to stretch my imagination to see what that.
That's because Fortnite isn't actually really. It's its own little virtual world. That's all it is. It's not a true metaverse.
Yeah.
And they no. As far as I'm concerned, bastardized the term, trying to avoid being calling themselves a game. And you're right, Jay. Like if you were to truly talk about a true metaverse, you would have one reason, a persona of some sort, shared content that moves between Fortnite and something else. But they haven't got anything else.
You need your own avatar, like in Player One. You have your own unique avatar that's persistent, that you then have full control of everything, your data, what you look like, how you come across, and you then are the centerpiece of that metaverse, going into different universes within that metaverse.
Yeah.
And I who's going to create that? I think it's always, at the moment, it's at least going to be from we've already got a universe. Let's extend it up, sideways, outwards, and try and connect to other ones that we have partnerships with. So I don't think we're going to get the answer, but it's I just feel like it's
those partnerships. Just you can think of them as little mini these other these separate metaverses, because that's what people are doing. They're building a separate metaverse at the moment. They're like countries within your overall metaverse. And really the people who are going to start building these little mini metaverses first are the people who have got really engaging IP in games, and the people who have got a fan base, because that's how you would draw them in. Yeah, and then you can imagine that once that happens, you kind of, hey, let's go to the Last of Us land, or basically God of War land, or let's go to Halo land, or Forza land. You know what I mean?
This is the other thing. Like, we talked about there's constraints around food and our bodies need, sun, and so. Where's all the time going to come for just living in all these metaverses? That's the other thing as well.
Oh, it's the same with gaming, right? You've got to make a choice.
I don't think it's that different, to be honest. Yeah, from that perspective. and I really think the reason that companies are making these sorts of bets that they are, because they know when it comes down to it, if we as a company need to make money, we need to be where people are spending their time.
Yeah.
In order for them to spend their money.
And they need to be rewarded for their time, which is quite key. Yeah. Which is why this whole, there's so many games which just abuse your time, and I think that's where those will actually lose out. The ones that reward you for your time,
Destiny,
a reason for you to be there, they will keep that attention. They will keep them going.
Yeah, I think that's where I can see Sony, Bungie, Lego, and kind of who are the creators of Unreal? Epic, sorry. Yeah. I can see. It feels like they are trying to create the most sticky.
Well, yeah. Think about it. I mean, you have stuff that's looming large that speaks to kind of having virtual economies. Yeah. Then your future considerations are, we talked about VR services, but people are actually buying virtual land, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually considered buying some as well. I haven't actually bought it yet.
Yeah, what's all that about?
I was going to say there was another one, right? I mean, PlayStation Home was probably the more successful one, but I think Second Life.
Yeah.
Was an actual that was like really big.
It was pretty much the same thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I think that had a bit more in terms of what you could do, like buying virtual land and stuff.
Yeah.
So far, there's nothing new.
And
I've invested in this space as well, right? Loosely invested, right? but one of my main worries, and I've invested money that I'm willing to lose, I should say. In the same way, VR had a bit of a resurgence, and it's kind of still been a little bit static and hasn't grown at the growth that we've expected it to. I feel like this is going to suffer the same. And it's going through a hype now, and it's going to have a slow burn to get to where it is, like a real slow burn.
I think it'll be GTA 6. That'll be the real one.
It's just one of these things that I think we've had to give it a name. If you know what I mean, right? But the reality is that I just think a lot of these things are quite organic when you look at what what's behind it all and the foundations of it all. You know what I mean? And naturally, these things will come together.
Yeah. It's a basket of things that exist, that are evolving, or new ideas and things that are still to come that they can put under this wrapper of Metaverse.
Yeah, correct. I mean, even Sony and Microsoft recently, it's been said that they're looking at technology that will give you that in-game advertisement capability for free-to-play games. Yeah. Free to play or the metaverse, who knows, right? But they're doing things like that because they need to monetize. Yeah. But I think the real power is going to be when we have these so-called virtual worlds. Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to act as the government? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm surprised they haven't done that earlier, because how many games do you play where there's some fake, what looks like advertising that's been created by a developer, where it could actually just be some real adverts, and maybe they can reduce the cost of the game, or they can maintain the game cost for consumer, because the development cost goes up, and that makes no difference to us as long as they don't overdo it, and that's the balance, right?
Yeah, it is the balance.
Not overstretching.
I think they already had it.
The boundary.
Back in the day when I was playing stuff like Unreal Tournament and Team Fortress 2, the servers themselves could actually put adverts on the side of buildings. So I just don't understand why no one has really done it and actually pushed it to the advertisers. Just doesn't. I don't know. It just feels like they've just focused on microtransactions and that side of things rather than necessarily giving them the proper another kind of revenue stream.
Well, they're still learning though, and they're probably still learning what they can get away with also.
True.
Look, before we go too much into that, I mean, we should start wrapping up this conversation. But so I had a few items to say. This is our food for thought. In a means of getting us to be, if it's even possible, being more philosophical than we've already been. And I was thinking to myself as I was preparing for this, I thought to myself, if AI and robotics is the human race's attempt at replicating life, then is the Metaverse the human race's attempt at replicating the Earth in reality? And basically, what is the non-financial cost of the Metaverse? And maybe it's not a question we can answer now, because I'm pretty sure that'd be a whole other kind of podcast. Yeah. And then closer to home, and thinking about, let's say, Sony's dreams, like that kind of like game creator, is that actually a kind of VR product? Because the first time I'd seen it, it was basically somebody in VR using the Move controllers, I think, sculpting content in it. And is it the Minecraft of the VR space? In which case, are you then playing God? Alright? And how will creation tools that we spoke on earlier fit into this metaverse? If you know what I mean.
That game is really interesting because Sony allowed that game to drift so far from where it originally was, and that they continue to invest in it. Why?
That's why I'm asking.
And it actually makes sense in the context of this metaverse. They've already built out the tools.
Correct. And the first step is right. Let's give our player base something to engage with, and they're almost priming us. And maybe the next step is let's allow our player base to create what they want to engage in, and then it becomes a bit more viral. And it starts expanding. And that's your real getaway. When you have control, or you think you have control of that metaverse, then that is the ultimate piece of escapism.
Have you guys ever played Dreams?
I think I actually had it for a little bit, but I didn't do much with it.
Did you? Yeah. Because there's some people who've actually replicated other games in there, haven't they?
Yeah, they're doing amazing
like
stuff
franchise.
with
it. Yeah. You go into that strange territory, though, because it's like... I mean, back in the day, things like Warcraft 3, those things where people had crafted their own things, they are massively successful nowadays. Things like Dota that kind of spawned from it. But then the issue becomes copyright, right? Because I think there was it in Dreams where they replicated one of the Mario games, right?
Yeah. I'm literally looking at that image now.
Nintendo stepped in.
Eurogamer, Sony pulls Super Mario from Dreams.
Yeah.
After Nintendo complained.
Yeah, they complained.
Wow, it's a very powerful tool.
It's an interesting conversation, and who can say what the metaverse will look like going forward? But I'm with kind of Jay on this. I think games and gamers will be,
leading the way.
They will lead the way, and they'll be the first to step into this uncharted territory. And to the degree we're actually quite ready for it. There's a long way to go, but it's kind of it's exciting what they could do with it, if you know what I mean. I don't want another home, but if you could imagine a situation where I could, with my VR headset on, I could step into a virtual world that looks closer to something like, the Avatar. Yeah, something along those lines, something absolutely alien and interesting and kind of like absolutely fantasy driven. That would be amazing. And if you could tack on enough content, enough services that you could, do something in that kind of so-called metaverse. That would be an amazing thing.
Why do you think Sony dropped the PlayStation Home then?
There's just no one on it. Again, no content.
No content, yeah.
Yeah, it's just they just didn't have anything going for it. So I think stopping it after a while makes sense.
That's probably just a business decision, really.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I think with that all said, it is time to move on to our next topic.